All right, we think we're on the air.
I'm gonna go with right now.
You think we're on the air right now? We might be on the
I
air
do.
right now.
Yes,
The
sir.
pro quality of
Miss.
production continues.
Well, our three producers are off this week, so
Yeah. Our staff, yeah, which we don't have. All right.
right.
I have a little bit of security. I'm Doug Splinter. That's Todd Kidda. This is Office Flash Friday. I got a little security. A little Mac stuff. For Mac goodness. You and I have some Outlook. Uh, like envy for Outlook for the Mac a little. We've talked about that before, haven't we?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So like sometimes some of the UI teams like one up each other on platforms, and so um, yeah. So and then
Well, plus they're running on that really just that buttery smooth M1 over there
well, we're
now, aren't
talking
they?
about that in a minute. Yeah. So
Yeah.
all right. So but first a little security. And I got a couple of little random things, but mostly this is about you and something really important that we're going to dive into rather technically deep and super slow to understand how amazingly cool a Power BI announcement is this week. So we're going to really unpack that one. So I'm going to go quick so that we have time to get through this. First, unless you were living under a rock,
Cool.
you might have noticed that there was some challenges in software supply chain security in the last few weeks, which you said I
Understandably.
shouldn't
Yeah.
gloat. Was your thing about my predictions about that was the next
Yeah. I
security.
said don't come off too
No,
secure
well, what did you say? Don't come off too condescending. What was the word? I don't know.
or
Doesn't
whatever.
matter. Software supply chains, and if you have a store ecosystem, then the attacks change from self-install to the ecosystem that exists, right? You
Hmm.
saw remember the attack against iOS where they had total compromise from malformed packets over AirDrop, right? It's like 2 months ago.
Hmm.
Um, and they patched that one quick. Well, SolarWinds got compromised through their trusted publication fabric, so the updates themselves were compromised. And because it's a network tool that did lots of network things, it looking around in unique manners probably didn't trigger as many rules, because if I'm a betting person, I'd bet your network analytic tools like, oh, well, stuff coming from them that looks odd could be, a companion intrusion detection, system or something.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of things you do with something like that. So anyway, we released some framework and capability specific guidance around the Microsoft stuff to make sure all that stuff shuts down. If you haven't remediated or you want to activate that functionality, links will be in the post. And there's a thing about Brad Anderson, our president of our company, who talked about like what this means, this level of sophistication. This comes on the heels of the FireEye breach, right? Where that was a nation state level attack against a security vendor. And it's just uh, it continues to happen. The only thing you can do is be ready, right? Like do good things. Have a breach remediation plan. Have good tools in your hands. Pay attention to security feeds, because if you were doing the right thing in this case, patching your software and staying current, you were actually compromising. So when the right thing is a bad thing, like what do you do? Well, the answer is everything's good. I would not encourage people to stop patching or doing whatever. I would say that this is going to shine a light on people's secure software development practices, and that's the real place this needs to churn. How do we actually attest to the individual components that we build all the software of, right? So
Yeah, because this happened from a build server.
that's
Yeah,
correct.
that's
Yeah,
where all
they
this started.
compromised the build pipeline. Is what my understanding is at this point, based on the
Hmm.
limited information I have. And you and I've talked about this before. Like a lot of times, you license a component from someone else in order to accelerate your software development, right? Like video codecs are commonly licensed, codec transformation stuff. You license these things, you pull them in. Like I remember doing an open source project you and I were working on for GitHub, and I kid you not, like it became a joke for me that my package was signed by FuzzyCat 12, and I'm like, well, if I have a problem, I'll just call FuzzyCat.
Yeah,
Right?
great
So
support.
the now that's nothing wrong with that. That's the power of
Mhm.
the open source community. But that does require that you do your own homework on the trusted software ecosystem. So enough of my high horse. That's not what this show's about. But tactically, you should go hit these buttons and make sure you've remediated and done stuff. Enough of security soapbox on top of it. I got a fun one. Did you know Starbucks released an app in Microsoft Teams?
I thought that was
I
pretty
just think you should go
cool.
check it out, because you can send someone out like that's a little delight, right? We used to say there's essentials in software, there's needs, and then there's delighters, things that you go, oh, well, there were a few other ones that got released this too, that like the decisions, the apps for meetings has started to explode. Have you seen like the decisions app,
Yeah.
that third party one that does the
Yes.
agenda? Like there's some pretty cool how to have more effective meetings, and in this world we're in
Mm.
right now of virtual meetings, that apps for meetings is definitely something you should be exploring. So I had the post out there on the different app for meetings on top of that one, for to go on top of that. I got one more security related one. you probably stopped this, but I spotted this. If you're using Edge on your phone, right? So, and I do
Which I
like Edge Mobile. I mean, I really do. Um,
it's
I
very
like the continuity of it across all of my devices because I run every operating system on the planet.
well. I especially like that it has my work profile that I can authenticate to work
Yeah, with the
stuff
trusted
seamlessly.
stuff for that, right?
Yeah.
Which is super interesting and amazing. Um, but the thing people said was, well, look, if I put these passwords in the vault, then I can't fill them in apps. Well, now they have in preview the Microsoft Authenticator app can essentially do for me what my LastPass app is doing right now, right? Where
Yep.
it'll autofill your passwords from your vault on top of it. And so I think it's worth a look. If you don't currently use one of those services, take a gander at it and have it. I'm sort of invested, so it requires some time and energy for me to shift.
Same.
So, but if you haven't made the connection to that, I think it's definitely worth a look. Um, SharePoint had some updates to the Teams content and collaboration components on top of it for like fast pinning of resources and teams. The whole uplift on like the SharePoint Pages component that went into it, the ability to have the updated SharePoint tab app where you can have like document libraries fast pinned. So basically getting content and elements from SharePoint into and the browse capability, the little page thumbnails and stuff. If you want to pin a page or something else like that.
Hmm.
As you know, I'm a huge SharePoint news fan, right? And SharePoint communication sites. And if there are
Yep.
relevant information and components and documentation, things you're building that are contributing back, I think it's an awesome framework to have that collaboration around the content, or to embed that comms components that are relevant to your team from SharePoint sites within. And then if you combine this with some Power Automate to do like posts of news feeds and stuff like that, you can have a really potent stay current fabric based on this. But before, the SharePoint stuff felt kind of disjointed in its
Yeah.
presentation. It was basically iframing, right, in the beginning. And they've continued to move it forward to the point where it's actually pretty good. I would
Hmm.
say it's heading towards really good. And so
Yes.
it's gone from, okay to good, better. I wouldn't say we're quite at completion because, you never get there, but they're getting to a pretty mature level where you'd be more about the nuance than the big blocks. So nice work in my opinion by the SharePoint engineering team to continue their team's alignment. So you should go check that one out as well. I do think I had the meeting apps called out on top of it. So they showed. First, I don't know if we did talk about it. The AI based noise suppression. Did we talk about that one releasing and going GA?
I don't think we did. I think we've mentioned it
I
in the
think we just
past.
skimmed and said everyone should know about this one now, but they had a pretty good example, like a blog post that showed the before and after for on top of it, and also for the
Well,
packet
frankly,
loss stuff. So,
I'm kind of excited. Can you scroll back up a
yes,
little bit?
sir.
Do you know much about the new audio codec? Is
I
that rolled
I
out?
I do. Um,
Okay.
so
Because I listened to this and the difference was stunning.
right. So turns out that we're good at low bandwidth codecs and have been forever because of gaming.
Hmm.
So we've had other low bandwidth audio codecs before, and we've sort of waffled between our own proprietary, if you will, and open source skinny codecs and everything else. And so those of you who've been around the voice community for a while, I'm not going to rattle off all the acronyms because most people don't care. But I think being able to go adaptive on codecs to get bitrate with good audio quality as low as 6 kilobits per second in a geographically dispersed world is a good thing.
That's amazing.
So as long as we are standards based on our interfaces and sockets and provide access to those codecs, right, without tough licensure or anything like that. We used to require people to license some of these things, like the actual codec for interop. We've gone away from most of those motions, which I'm happy about, just from a personal opinion
Hmm.
standpoint. So I'm happy about this, and I think it was done, for lack of a better term, the right way this time. Does that make sense? Hopefully.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
So so those have been around for a while in the Skype community. You're not going to be you're like, well, this is kind of
Man,
a
because
return to some of the link skinny codecs, right?
this is a big deal when we have people in our ear 6 hours a
Yeah, I know.
day,
Yeah.
right, or whatever it is. The better that sounds, the better your
Yep.
life
Yep.
is. And I don't think that's
No, no,
hyperbole.
it's not. All right. Well, I want to keep speeding through because we really want to give more time for on top of it. And then this was my favorite one about the better meeting apps, which you guys can go skim
Yes.
out there if you didn't catch it on top of things, on top of stuff and things.
I think a good New Year's resolution would be, I mean, gosh, we've been doing meetings forever, right? And we've been doing more online meetings more recently. But meetings, I think, sometimes have become just this thing you
Yeah.
do and you kind of just throw a half hour on the calendar, you just show up and you do it. Like, be more planful, be more purposeful with your meetings and how you
I
run it and the time that you use.
I was reading through the reviews for people because when they post these things, people go out and hit it. And I was reading through the reviews, and someone's like, "I downloaded it and it didn't work." I'm like, "But it's an app source deployment for Teams. Your Teams environment is probably governed, and you're not allowed to deploy it. So I wouldn't take that one as a dart for either side of the equation." So remember that if you are restricting some of these things, that we're out marketing them. And so you need to put some kind of framework in for your users to request access to these different things, right? Like there is some user education because we're educating the heck out of people as to how to go do these things. And I completely understand and even approve of lockdown protocols, provided you have an easy, discoverable way for your users to ask for the stuff they want in order to add on.
That's right.
So, all right, end of my posts for the week. Some fun team stuff. Go turn on the security functionality for it. Check out the new SharePoint web part integration. So puffy and light from me, but the substance is all about what's next from Mr. Kidda.
Let's do it. Okay, so I kind of positioned this one to Doug I'm really struggling to think of a more singular important capability that's shipped in Power BI or really enterprise BI in the last number of years.
You and I spent the last 20 minutes geeking out about this before the show started. We did.
Yes.
We just sat there and played with this a little bit.
I mean, this is something that I've wanted, this capability for 10 plus years. And not just me, but I think everybody that's been in this space. Because really, to enable self-service BI, you have to have a good foundational enterprise BI capability, right? So all that with this, like, really boring title, direct query for Power BI datasets and Azure Analysis Services. Like, okay, what does that mean? Basically, what this means is you have enterprise data sets, right? Maybe your dimensional model, maybe your marts, maybe your sales models, whatever, something that is well understood, well curated, well trusted inside your organization. And you need to manipulate that model somehow. You need to decorate that with your own attributes. You need to group things in a different way. You need to add your own measures and put them on the same report next to the enterprise data. So that's a need that's been there forever. How would you do that generally, right? A lot of times that would start with the E word, right? Export to Excel. You would export that data out and you would do your work in Excel. And maybe even if you had it all kind of pipelined out and it pretty automated, a lot of people get to that point. But this enables you to actually leave that enterprise data in situ where it lives and bolt things on top of it.
Can we just show it? Let's start with a show.
Yeah, I'm gonna just show it, and I'll take as much time as it makes sense to do, and then we'll see what else I can get to. So, excuse me. This is Power BI Desktop, and I'm going to walk through just literally from scratch doing this. So I'm going to connect to a Power BI data set in this case, because that's what
now a data set is an enterprise published collection of data that someone has done some usually some pretty decent work to label it, to organize it in a manner that they think is useful for the enterprise, and they could be an approved, governed set, right?
Yep. So you can see here, I'm logged into Power BI Desktop with my Microsoft account, and with my Microsoft employee account, work account, and I see this model here called AdventureWorks, AW in this case. It's published by this guy named Todd Kidda, so I don't know how trustworthy it actually is, but I'm going to connect to it live, meaning I can come in here and immediately begin building reports on top of this data. I mean, this is not new, right? If this is the first time you've seen something like this, then maybe you think this is pretty cool, and that's great. But I'm going to go ahead and just drag some of this stuff over and turn that into a card. I'm going to go over to product. I want to break this down by maybe product subcategory and the sales amount, and maybe put that on a bar chart. Okay, so this is my report thus far. And I'm not bringing any of this data down. This is all happening. This is in Power BI Desktop, but the data lives in Power BI. This could be gigs and gigs or bigger of data, and it's just querying this remote repository. But let's say there's this categorization of product data that I need to do based on some new CEO initiative, right? So strategic products, and I need to track the growth of strategic products over time. Well,
hang on. So let's talk about this. So you have this data set. The team that produced the sales data goes, but you have a new question that they didn't consider, right?
Correct.
There's a new
Correct.
issue on the table. I had a customer, one of our regional customers, that had to suddenly deal with tariff overlays, right? Because of all the negotiations and borders and everything else, where they were trying to figure out source materials. But none of their data always assumed that tariffing would be level. Well, as we know, the last few years of trade agreements, that's not been the case. So suddenly they had to go tackle this issue for their senior leadership, right? And you have a similar issue that you're talking about. You're like, someone just came to me with a new challenge, but how long would it take me to get in front of the data team in order to get my stuff added?
Well, and how many data engineers do I need to talk to get it on their backlog, to get it prioritized,
right, yeah.
to make sure it's not...
Where do I go? How do I get this enterprise data set modified? And why should it be modified if I'm the only person who has this question, as important as it might be? Right?
That's right. So here, what I have here is I have my own custom data. This is a CSV file, but this could be an Excel file. It could be a SQL database, right? It could be lots of different
So you
things.
made this mapping in Notepad, and you said accessories and bikes are strategic clothing and components, or not?
Correct. And these are my first column is product categories, right? And this is my strategy flag that I'm going to use. So this is just sitting on my desktop literally right now. So what I'm going to do is, again, I'm connected remotely to a Power BI service. I was just checking the chat, make sure we weren't getting anything. I'm going to make changes to this model, and it's going to prompt me for some things. It's like saying, hey, if you're going to make changes to this model, you need to change this from a live connection to a direct query connection. And if you've been doing Power BI for a while, you understand the distinction. Largely, for the purposes of this demo, it's kind of like, don't worry about it too much. So I've converted this into a direct query model. It's still doing the same thing, right? We're now, I'm still connected remotely and interacting with remote data. However, now I'm able to get more data. So again, I'm connected to a remote enterprise data set, and now I can bring in new data into this model. So I called my thing custom data. I'm going to click open. And so far, this is all pretty normal stuff. Here's a preview of my file. I'm going to click transform because I want to give these columns names. And again, so far, this is all pretty normal Power BI stuff.
It's funny. I always load them in and rename them in the table view. It's just funny that, like, the habits.
Yeah. You're talking about over here?
Yeah, I'll show you. No, I leave it. I just do the rename.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Unless I'm actually doing transform.
It's all about what you want to do.
Yeah, it's funny. I just like you.
You like it to do it that way? That's great. So I'll say like category or strategic products, right? And I'm going to load. So I've renamed my data set. I brought in my columns, renamed them. I'm going to load them in. So so far, all pretty normal stuff. Oh, this is pretty important to think about too. So potential security risk, because I'm now combining two different data sets and doing joins essentially. It's saying you may send data from one data source to another data source. So like logging could capture some information or something. It's just making sure you're aware that data from one data source may be sent to another data source.
You said you want to combine these two, and so the things that you do might now be combined.
Correct. So now I'm over in the model view. So I was on report view right here. So now I'm over on model view. And you can see that this is with colors showing me where my different things are coming from. So my 1, 2, 3, 4 tables up here, this is Power BI stuff. Well, first, I want to show you something too. Let's say in my model that I'm building here, I want to hide something. Like I don't want age to show up in my model. I just hid something from the enterprise model for the people that are going to use my report. So I can actually now, do things like change formatting strings and some of those things, but the data still lives with the enterprise team. So now this is the magic here, where I can grab product category from the product table on top of my local data set, hit OK. And now I have a relationship between an enterprise data set and my local CSV file.
Now, let's point out, so you just combine these two things. The enterprise data. You actually changed the presentation layer of the enterprise data, but you didn't break your connection to the fidelity and truth of that data. If they add another million rows, you did not do the E-word of export, right? This is still the actual enterprise data set, managed, curated, controlled by the official publisher, Todd Kidda, no matter how trustworthy or he is. And Todd Kidda, the BI or business analyst person, just decided I don't need this part of it and I want to combine it with other things.
That's right. That's bananas.
So
That's pretty
yeah,
cool. All right. So now that was the magic. Here's the payoff. So now I can come over here to my report view again. And now notice I have this new table sitting right next to these, right? So I can say strategic products. I want to put my strategy flag here. I want to put sales amount. Boom. That's the payoff. That's amazing. So now I can, build a, because everyone loves pie charts, right? Build a chart showing my strategic and non-strategic sales based on the categorization that I just invented on top of an enterprise data set without
you could go
exporting.
download another visual, put a slicer on top of it, and let people explore the data however the hell they want to.
And then I can publish this. Now, I mean, this is Power BI Desktop, but I can now publish this to the service as well and share this with my team or whatever.
So then my boss had this question, hey, can you break this down by strategic? Oh, they didn't have it in the enterprise data model. I created a quick product categorization mapping of which ones were strategic, brought it into the model, published it back out to the team. But as new sales data comes in, it'll honor the fidelity of that because it's not a point in time, it's live.
That's right. So I didn't fork anything. I'm writing on top of it.
It's really, I mean,
I hope other people are as excited about this.
And maybe say, some people might be like, you couldn't do that before. No, you definitely could not. It's extremely difficult to pull something like this off. So and
as far as I'm concerned, this is pretty unique in the marketplace. So I'm pretty pumped about this. That's okay. So let's talk about some of the stuff about this. So this is in preview. This has been a long time coming. And I'm going to kind of go back here. Oh, there's, I'm trying to remember what I heard in an internal call versus what's in this blog post, because I don't want to share anything that I shouldn't. But, there's this idea of chaining, right? And even maybe like looping. So there's some interesting things that kind of come up here, like, because these models now depend on each other. Well, what if I created a model that depends on a model that depends on another model, right? So there is some amount of chaining that you can do. That's not unlimited. So that's something to think about as well. And I'm trying to remember what the row level security, because if you're doing this against the model row level security, so row level security will be applied on the source on which they're defined, but not be applied to any other data sets in the model. Okay?
Well, yeah, because it's defined on the actual original source.
Correct. Yes, that's right. So certainly keep in mind, row level security, and I hate to already talk about how to lock this down, but I believe there's also going to be a way using some of the powerful tools that we've enabled over the last few months to kind of turn this off. If you have a data set you don't want people to derive from, that's going to be there as well.
Oh, you could be like, yeah, you could do it from these ones, but this one I don't want to have this one.
Correct. Maybe there's just
I do not want you reinterpreting this. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Exactly. So this is the first down payment here. Much more to come. Take a look at some of the limitations, see if they apply to you. I'm just thrilled about this. So excited. Long time coming. Just this is really amazing. So hopefully again you guys see the value there and are excited about this. So this next one is a kind of a Rev 2 of something we announced last year about data protection and sensitivity labels. So now this is being added to Power BI Desktop as well.
You and I were in these early calls. Do you remember that with the product engineering teams about like data labeling and all the rest of the stuff? And we're like, how come we don't have the Microsoft Information Protection, the AIP labeling syntax? Like, why don't we just have? And now all that stuff a year later is in the purview. It's in here. Yep. Amazing.
And of course, I can classify this locally, which will, even if that's all I ever do, even if I'm just using PBIX files locally, I can, that'll be applied to that file on my machine. But when I upload to the service, of course, that label is going to ride along with my model and my report. So that's important. Both the model and the report are going to get labeled here, which makes sense. So certainly go take a look at that if that's relevant, if you guys are using sensitivity labels. Here's another one. This is the month of preview stuff in Power BI. Small multiples. This has been one I'd say we've been beaten up for probably an appropriate amount of time for not having really proper small multiples because there's other products in the marketplace that have had this for maybe more than a minute. So we've added small multiples for certain visuals, and I think this is a great rev here. So this kind of just goes through of how to create it, different ways, and it makes you really think, like, from a UX perspective, what do users expect when they click on this stuff, right? So if I click on one bar in one small multiple, what should that mean? And this goes through, like, what does that mean, right? So how do I filter, in this case, I'm breaking down small multiples by country. How can I filter by Australia? How can I filter by the specific category of Australia? How do I filter by the category across all countries, right? So interesting things to think about here, and certainly take a look at that. Scrolling, sorting, how to format. And as usual, this is a preview, so kind of, what some of the limitations are, what's coming. So take a look at that. This has been also, I would say, a long time coming. And, the Power BI team, always delivers with their fast iteration. So getting something out there and iterating quickly, give your feedback. This is another one you and I were having a philosophical discussion around. Power BI can really sing, and not just Power BI, other things. DevOps was another example we talked about. Can really sing when you have the full power of, like, Power Automate at your fingertips. This is an important one that has been added to Power Automate. Really, it's the Dataflows connector. And this is not just actions, this is triggers. So I can get a notification now through Power Automate whenever my data flow refresh completes. So this is important for really a couple, three scenarios. Really, to me, the most important one is I want to refresh my data set when my data flow. If my data set relies on a data flow, stands to reason that I'd want to kick off the refresh of my data set when my data flow completes. I know there's a lot of jargon there, but basically getting that dependency refresh down to as little a time as possible and kicking off those refreshes when appropriate. Another one is notifications. So sending out notifications to teams or email or whatever whenever a data flow completes, which also allows for some interesting reporting capabilities. So being able to do cross-environment data flow monitoring is possible using an approach like this. So go check that out. And you can also initiate a data flow refresh, right? So maybe some other trigger happens in some other tool, whether that's a SaaS product or a database, and I want to kick off the refresh of my data flow, which will then kick off the refresh of my data set, which means I now have a minimally latent data set available for reporting inside Power BI.
Awesome.
So pretty exciting stuff. A couple things here, and then that's all I got. GA, the Power BI reports as system dashboards in model-driven apps are now GA. So this is good stuff. And this also, what I just love to see here too, is, of course, the ALM support, right? Because as I promote my model-driven app from dev to test to prod, of course, I'm going to be pointing to probably a different Power BI report in my tenant. So being able to set that at each environment is obviously pretty useful. And then last but not least, I think we talked about this once before when these were in preview, but a couple AI builder capabilities have gone GA. So multiple outcome prediction, meaning if I have a classification problem basically, and I want to predict one of like maybe 5, 6 things in a business entity, I now have the ability to do that, as well as numerical prediction, otherwise known as a regression. So those are GA. AI Builder is a killer capability. All ties back together with things like Power BI, Power Automate, as part of the citizen developer Power Platform thing that we have here. So good stuff. Like I said, this is, I think I saw Alex Powers say on Twitter that this is going to be, where were you when you first read about composite models, right? It's that big of a deal.
It is super cool. I think they're just tremendous value to humans, right? Like,
yes, absolutely. So good engineering work by the team. Can't wait to see
and
this
the
thing
elegance
come to,
of the
GA.
shift. Like, I don't know how to say this. Historically, we might have done it, but we would like, womp. Your model is not currently in the proper connected state to perform this function. And you'd be like, well, what do I need to do? And what it was, hey, man, your model's not in the proper connection state. Click here, and I'll change it. Like, that shift represents a UX muscle that we did not maybe have in our previous life, in my opinion, in the Power BI and data
Sure.
tools.
No, I
We'd
I
throw up
can.
an
I'll buy
obscure
that.
error, and
Sure.
you'd be like, "Where do I go to change the thing?" And then now we're
Well,
like,
Doug, you clearly need to contact your system
"Yeah, right.
administrator.
Yeah, I got error 400. Right, your system administrator.
Yeah, he'll help
An
you out.
unexpected connection error has occurred." So
Yep.
but I just like that because it was like, "Look, I need to change something for you in order to do this." So yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well,
And that
um,
on time.
I well just to
Oh,
let you know our YouTube backend is telling us the audio stream's current bit rate 0 is lower than the recommended bit
oh
rate.
no.
So I'm assuming that's a mistake. Hopefully people can hear us.
Well, I'm
0 would
assuming
be
if
lower than
someone
recommended.
couldn't, they would have sent a note.
I would
I would
guess.
hope.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess we'll learn at playback because I'm showing.
Well, a week from today is Christmas in the United States. Well, really Christmas
Is it
everywhere,
really
I would
Christmas
think,
in the United States?
as well as all the other countries.
Surprise!
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're
So,
celebrating this particular holiday season, we will not be on the air for a Flash Friday,
no.
and then I'm off through the new year. So
Yep.
so our first show will be back in January, which I'm sure will be jam packed with chocolatey
Jam
goodness, right? So we'll have yeah, that's it for a.
Well, Doug, we'll see everyone in a new
We will, and
year,
I'm
I
okay to say
guess.
goodbye to 2020. I'm okay to put this one in the review mirror.
Goodbye or
The
some other
dumpster
choice
fire
words.
of a year, right? So
Yeah.
well, we appreciate all of you watching, and we'll see you on Twitter, on Dancer, on Dasher, and all that stuff. So I got nothing else. I'm done. You all take care. Todd, have a great day.